You ever heard the phrase, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets? It's not just a saying, it's a strategy, a philosophy, and for Prince Harry, it might just be a life sentence in a Californian mansion with more bathrooms than Friends. This isn't about luxury. It's about control. Meghan Markle didn't just walk into Harry's life. She airlifted him out of his reality, away from his family, his country, and into a world she could curate. And now with King Charles's health on the decline and Prince William extending olive branches, it's clearer than ever Harry wants back in, but he can't. Why? Because she won't let him. Let's cut to the chase. There's a narrative floating around, delicately dropped into Hello magazine of all places, that Meghan is terrified to return to the UK for safety reasons. The UK apparently is too dangerous for her and the kids. Never mind the fact that she posts. Archie and Leet online constantly invites camera crews into their lives and flies to Mexico for weekend getaways. Britain Wheat's Britain Thoughts, where she draws the line, total nonsense. If this were about safety, there'd be no Instagram selfies, no Netflix specials, no documentary trailers featuring the children front and center. This is about keeping Harry locked in her world and far from his old one, and let's be honest, Harry, going back to the UK would be a disaster for Meghan Bexath. Moment he reconnects with William or shares a quiet laugh with Kate over tea at Kensington Palace, the spell begins to crack. He remembers who he is. Was not the spare, not the runaway royal, but a guy who once laughed freely at Sandringham, who used to get in trouble with his brother, who had a bond with his father that wasn't filtered through PR meganos. This, and she's not taking chances. That's why the kids can't go either. Because if Archie runs through the halls of Buckingham, please, and Lily curls up in her great-grandfather's armchair at Balmoral, it's over. They might like it worse, they might prefer it, and Meghan, she loses grip. Her entire power structure relies on distance, emotional, geographic, generational. Keep the kids away from the royals and you control the narrative. Let them in and suddenly they start asking questions. Why haven't we met Grandad Charles before? What's it like being a real princess? Why does mommy call them all dangerous? The irony. Meghan claims to be protecting her kids when really she's protecting herself from the possibility that Harry might not need her as much as he once did. And that's the fear, not muggers in London or dodgy tabloids, but that if Harry remembers what home feels like, he might want it back, so the walls go up. Excuse here, media threat there, sprinkle in some trauma talk, and suddenly it's all justified, except it's not, because this isn't just about Meghan banning a royal reunion. It's about her ensuring that one never even becomes possible. She's made Harry believe that Britain is the enemy, that Charles and William are cold, uncaring, even dangerous, that the monarchy is a machine built to destroy. But strip away the rhetoric and all that's left is a man standing between two worlds, one ruled by his past and one manufactured by someone else's ambitions. And here's where it gets dark, because even if Meghan and Harry split someday, and it's looking more like when than if she still holds the trump card, the kids, she'll say Britain isn't safe. She'll have years of headlines and magazine quotes to back her up. Harry may win a divorce, but he'll never win freedom. Not if she's already turned their children into leverage. Harry didn't just fall in love, he disappeared. Not literally, of course. You can still spot him wandering through Montecito in a baseball cap, trying to blend in while doing the groceries. But the version of Harry who once joked with palace staff, got muddy playing polo, and was cheeky enough to wear a Nazi costume at a party, that guy's long gone. What's left is a shell, rebranded as a podcast guest memoir, author, and reluctant Netflix personality. And you can bet your last pound Meghan had a hand in that rebranding. See, when you want to control someone completely, you don't need chains. You just need isolation. Take them away from their people, from their routines, from anything that could remind them of who they were before you showed up. That's what happened here. Harry didn't just relocate to California. He was extracted one day. He's saluting his grandmother at a royal event. The next, he's feeding chickens in designer boots with Oprah. That's no devolution. That's reinvention on someone else's terms. And make no mistake, Meghan didn't marry Harry for a life in the shadows. She married him for legacy, for symbolism, For leverage, the title, the lineage, the global spotlight, it was all part of the brand. But the problem with marrying into royalty is that you can never fully divorce the bloodline. It follows you, which is why she's working overtime to sever those roots completely. No visits, no reunions, no photos with the grandparents. Not even Zoom calls, just a steady drip feed of stories about how unsafe and toxic Britain is. But here's the catch: kids grow up and kids ask questions. They're not going to accept vague answers forever. One day, Archie will notice his last name doesn't match the one on his school book. Lilith will hear whispers about castles and coronations and start piecing things together. And when they do, they're going to want to know why they've never met their royal cousins, why Grandpa Charles isn't in any family photos, why there's a whole side of their identity that's been erased. And when that day comes, the truth is going to get messy, because Harry will be faced with something he's managed to dodge for years. Now, accountability, it's one thing to walk away from a family feud. It's another to raise children in the dark about half their heritage. And you can already see the groundwork being laid for future tension. Meghan isn't just keeping the kids away from the royals. She's making sure they don't feel curious about them either. No bedtime stories about King Grandpa, no photos of young Harry in uniform. Just America's sunshine and curated content. That's the real legacy being built here. It's a carefully controlled narrative where Meghan is the center of the universe, and everything else is either dangerous, outdated, or irrelevant. And maybe that works for now. Maybe. The kids are too young to question it, but the clock is ticking, and once that curiosity hits, the whole thing unravels. Because no amount of PR can cover up a missing identity. No Instagram post can replace a lost childhood connection. You can Photoshop out a person from your life, but you can't delete where you come from. And Harry, whether he admits it or not, knows. This deep down, he knows those kids deserve more than curated smiles and staged moments. They deserve the full picture, the whole truth. Even if it hurts, even if it means going back to a place he's been taught to fear, there's a ticking clock hanging over all of this. Not just Harry's internal conflict or the looming curiosity of his kids, but something much more urgent. King Charles isn't getting any younger. The man is battling cancer, trying to hold a fractured monarchy together while dealing with the absence of his younger son and 2 grandchildren he barely knows. Every day that passes without contact is a missed memory, a moment that can't be replaced. And for Charles, time isn't just precious, it's finite. That's the part Meghan doesn't seem to care about, or maybe she does, and that's the point, because a full royal reunion doesn't just chip away at her control, it destroys the entire version of history has tried to rewrite. If Archie and Lilith see their grandfather not as a villain, but as a kind, dignified man who reads them bedtime stories and walks them through his garden at Balmoral, it flips everything. It makes the monster she warned them about look human, and that's dangerous to someone who's built her power on painting herself as Thelen protector in a hostile world. But this isn't just about Meghan either. It's about Harry's silence. He lets this narrative persist. He allows the idea to grow that his own father would pose a threat to his kids, that is homeland. It is too wild, too reckless to step foot in, and maybe it's guilt, maybe it's embarrassment. Or maybe it's fear, because facing the truth means confronting everything he gave up. It means admitting that the isolation wasn't just something that happened. To him, it was something he allowed, a choice he made repeatedly until the door to reconciliation almost disappeared. And that door, it's barely open now. William may still want to make peace. Charles still hopes to see his grandchildren, but there's a point of no return, and Harry's dancing dangerously close to it. He may not realize that one day soon it won't be Meghan keeping him from his family. It'll be too late, a funeral instead of a reunion, a memory instead of a second chance, a lifetime of wondering what could have been if only he'd acted sooner. What Meghan doesn't understand, or maybe does and just doesn't care, is that when you burn every bridge, you leave your children stranded. They grow up without roots, without context, without a sense of where they came from, and that loss will haunt them in ways no luxury, home, or brand deal can fix. Archie and Lilith aren't just missing out on castles and titles. They're missing the normal stuff, running through gardens with cousins, listening to royal family stories at bedtime. Building bonds with people who share their blood, that's what's really being stolen here, and when Harry eventually wakes up to all of this, it may be too late to fix. That's the tragedy. He's a man slowly realizing he traded one form of control for Anna Thurfram. Royal protocol to private manipulation. From public scrutiny to private isolation, and now he's stuck in a gilded cage of his own making with golden bars and a designer sofa, because if Meghan won't let the kids go and Harry won't fight for them to go, then the outcome's already written. A family split for good, a king who fades without meeting his grandkids. Great. A brother who watches his sibling disappear forever, and 2 children raised in a curated dream with half their story deleted. Not by fate, not by accident, but by design.